So if you're a follower of this channel, you probably buy a watch here and there, or maybe all the time. And with these crucial buying decisions, or trying to figure out what your next watch is, the question comes across around what are some of the best practices or things to think about when you're looking to buy your next watch. Now, I have a pretty cerebral approach to how I look at buying watches, and I wanted to share some of the things that I think are the most important things to consider when looking to buy. In the past, we've looked at things that I thought were overrated. Those are more like around features of watches. This is a little bit more of a philosophical question in my eyes and how you look at your collecting journey. We're going to look at 5 different things to consider, not to say that these are the only things to consider. I also can continue this series if you think it's useful and look at underrated things that I also think should be important when looking to buy a watch. But these, I would say, are the 5 commandments for myself and what I consider when looking to buy. One of them I'm not going to mention, but of course needs to be mentioned at the beginning, is just buy a watch within your means. Don't be stretching and creating financial hardship for yourself for a watch. That's silly. Don't be that guy. I hope it goes without being said that you do not want to be the person that owns a Rolex, but then can't afford a bed frame for your mattress. So before we jump into this video, I am very excited to announce a new brand on TeddyBaldassarre.com available for sale, and that is Certina. So if you're in the United States or in different parts of the world, you may have not heard of this brand before. Well, if you are that person, you're in for a treat because this is one of the more underrated brands, I think, in Swiss watches under $1,000. So Certina was founded in 1888, and while not necessarily, again, known well in different parts of the world, Certina is one of the leading brands in their segment in different parts of Europe, and is also on the radar of many vintage dive watch fans for its associations with Tektite, an underwater habitat project back in 1969, as well as having use by the Royal Australian Navy divers in the 1970s. So in other words, a diving pedigree that is severely glossed over. A couple models that I would recommend is their DS Action divers at 38 millimeters, well-made Swiss dive watches, 80-hour power reserve, Nificron hairspring, ISO compliance, solid lume, and multiple colors that make this a very compelling watch for somebody looking for a do-it-all type of timepiece for smaller wrists. Then you have the PH200M or 500M, they're professional heritage dive watches with great looks and build quality that is class-leading for the price. And finally, those that are looking for something a bit more restrained, you have their DS1. Yet even with some of their more dressy types of configurations, you're still getting 100 meters of water resistance. If you want to learn a little bit more about Certina, definitely check out the site. We'll have a link in the description down below. Great brand to check out. I'm very happy to have them on TeddyBaldassarre.com. Now for the first point, and this one is pretty obvious, but I do want to just talk about it a bit more, and that is design. Simply put, if you do not like the look of a watch, then you shouldn't buy it. Now that seems like, okay, Teddy, that's a very obvious point. Thanks for this very enlightening experience we're having here. But let me just go a little bit further. What I think is important to distinguish here is many people get caught up in what are the trends of design? What do other people like? What I want to fixate more on is, does the design speak to you? And this is, sure, maybe an obvious point, but there is this sense you have just visually, if you look at a watch, you can identify has things that you like or don't like, but very rarely do we actually write down or identify the key characteristics that we enjoy. What are the traits that we enjoy? Does this design carry over into your lifestyle and what you ultimately uphold? One thing I always think about is, if you're looking at a car, could you imagine yourself behind the wheel? The same thing with the watch on your wrist. Think about these elements of design beyond just maybe what's appealing to the eye, and actually start writing down the characteristics that you're going for and develop a philosophy for yourself. There are things that potentially other people might like that you might not like. Don't fall into the trends. Don't fall into what other people might think is good taste. Just do what you want to do. And I think if you walk that journey yourself, you'll find that it's a more fulfilling one, specifically when you look at the elements of design and what you enjoy. For this next point, this gets into that cerebral kind of thinking with your head mindset I have around sometimes watch collecting. Of course, you always want to lead with your heart and your emotion, but there is an element to just thinking this through, and that is viability for your lifestyle. Is a watch great if you can't actually wear the watch effectively or to the extent that you want to? To me, no, I don't think that's a great watch for you. It can still be a great watch, but you have to be honest about who you are, what's your lifestyle, and can you get the traction that you want and being able to wear it time and time again. If you love the look of a Cartier tank and it really does match your lifestyle and personality, great. But if you're somebody that uses your hands a lot for work around aquatic environments all day, is the tank the right option for you to be spending your thousands of dollars? I would argue probably not. The same could be said for, say, like a Panerai submersible. You might like the looks, but if you're somebody that always has to wear black tie types of attire, is that the right choice for you? Why I stress this point so much is we like to give a benefit of the doubt to, like, oh, if I get that, I'll make time for that watch. but very rarely, this is just from my own experience, it's hard to do that. Are you gonna let your life be dictated by the watch you wear? How I see it is a watch is there to complement the rest of what you're going for in your ensemble and your lifestyle. I don't want my watch to dictate my lifestyle. That's not why I buy watches. To go even further here, something that I think about when looking to spend a lot of money on, whether it's a watch or something else in my wardrobe, it's cost per wear. Something could be expensive, but if you think about how many times you're going to wear that particular piece of clothing or a watch on your wrist, you're able to break down that, hey, maybe this is actually a good investment for me because I'm gonna get my money's worth. If the cost per wear is going to be pennies rather than talking about hundreds of dollars, then it makes sense for you. But if you're gonna store the watch and never put it on your wrist, that whole element, I think, just goes away. It's not a good pick for you. It has to be viable for your lifestyle. And I think another thing outside of lifestyle itself is what else do you have in your collection? Does this have an opening within your collection so that you can make necessary time for it, especially in those early stages while you're starting to build up those key fixtures within your collection and you're trying to set up those pillars of that key assortment that you want to have that really makes up your total collection. If you already have a blue dive watch, does it make sense to get another one? I don't know. That's for you to decide. It's not to say that that's not a good idea for some people out there. It just depends where you're at in your journey and what really matters to you, but this is something I always think about. For our next point, it comes down to dimensions and wear on the wrist. I have gotten very good at identifying if a watch is going to work really well for me, even just based on looking at the dimensions. I can just look at, say, what a watch is delivering from lug to lug, case size, thickness, being familiar with the brand, trying on thousands of watches at this point. I can know if a watch is going to sit right on my wrist without even looking at it in person, but most people don't have that luxury. So you have to define the characteristics for what is going to be viable for you. Think about the key elements that are important when talking about wear. Look at the specific dimensions, case diameter, thickness, lug to lug, even the weight. Think about the bracelet as well. How does it integrate with the case and does that affect the wearing experience? One thing I also think about is I almost have like a key sweet spot for the style of watch and just the general spectrum of size that I'd be okay with. For me, the sweet spot for size is anywhere from 36 millimeters to 41 millimeters, depending on the style of watch. If I'm going for something without, say, an external bezel, it's more of a dress-oriented watch, I'm going on the lower end of that segment, so say more the 36 to 39. But if I'm looking at a dive watch, I'm okay with more in the 38 to 41 range even. Same could be said for a chronograph. I also let a little bit more leeway to thickness because of what is being brought forth by the complication itself and the actual complication of creating that type of watch. Same could be said for lug to lug. 44 to 48 is my sweet spot, but I could extend out to a 50 millimeter for the right type of watch. Some people might not even like that. They like things that are really compact and are very strict about their dimensions. What I would do in the early stages is you're developing this for yourself, try on a lot of watches, be the weird guy, buy some digital calipers, even go to the store and measure them out. Hey, the watch clerk might be like asking questions like, what's going on here? Why is this guy measuring our watches? But it'll help give you more data points so that when you're looking to buy watches in the future, you become more educated about the things you like, you don't like, and that'll serve very well in your collecting journey. One thing that we always try to do as well is if somebody ever reaches out to us or trying to buy a watch on our site and they have a question about size, how does it wear on the wrist, we never have a problem trying to just get a wrist shot if we have availability to do so, send it off to somebody so they can get a sense of how that might wear. Having resources like that when you're buying online I think is very helpful too, so don't be afraid to ask even questions like that. For point number 4, finding value where it sits in the market. Now this is not as black and white as saying, oh, it's about just value retention. Like that's not exactly what I'm looking for here, just at least for my own personal taste, but that could be where you define value to be. Value is different for different types of people. What you find as a valuable characteristic might not even be something that matters to somebody else. There's a lot of people out there that want a watch that sends a statement and they want a watch that's going to retain its retail value or be an appreciating asset. That's not something that I think about as much when buying a watch. Of course, it's in the back of my mind sometimes, but it's not the leading factor. For many people, that is a leading factor. So you have to define what value means to you. For myself, I like just getting great, cool movement tech, or I like the design. I like also where it's positioned within the market in terms of the fit and finish and how it's able to maybe separate from the crowd. Maybe there's a movement with some type of extended power reserve. It has some additional testing standards. Like a watch I'm wearing right now, this is is the Grand Seiko Birch, and I actually have the high beat version. Learning about this movement, the proprietary escapement that they created for this watch made it a compelling watch for me to own. Of course, there are a lot of other great watches in the price segment around the price of this watch, and much less, but you just have to define what value means for you, and of course your definition of value is going to change as you continue to ascend in the watches that you're looking at. If you're looking at budget options, it still matters, but the value element is going to be very much black and white around the idea of what is going to give me the most bang for the dollar amount I'm going to spend. Another thing that I will mention too is have a concept of diminishing returns and be okay with them. At a certain point, as you look to buy anything, if you're into any hobbyist type of world, you understand as you spend more, sometimes the feelings of what you're getting for the dollar can be lost because there's so much into the details. You don't feel it as much in the day-to-day practice. So really define what value means to you and identify the watches that really sit out within the price range that you're looking to spend money in. And for our final point here, do you like the brand and do you like the story the watch tells, and does it help tell your own story and who you are? I think it's important to look at a watch purchase as a reflection of a part of who you are. Not to a point where you are looking for your personal identity to be developed completely around this watch and a hobby, but a watch to me is the cherry on top of an individual. It should be an expression of your personality. This is such an idiosyncratic type of world we live in terms of developing style and taste and the brands that we decide to buy ourselves. I recently did a whole video about why I love the Omega Globemaster. For so many people out there, it's just like, whatever, I don't care about that watch at all, but I like it. And the reason why I do is I remember my own vintage journey about why I fell in love with constellations. I love the connection to the chronometer trials of the brand and their acts of precision and how the Pi Pan and the Constellation family became so much a part of that cornerstone of what the brand has now developed with their METAS certifications, their different pursuits of accuracy, and just the look of the Pi Pan dial. The design spoke to me and the history spoke to me. And that became a part of what I identified with. Watches are idiosyncratic in their way to allow small details of ourselves to shine. And I like to think about this as an extension of me. When I put on a watch on the wrist, it's not to show off, but it's just a reminder to just kind of be myself and what I care about and what I deem as cool. And that's what keeps me interested in watches. And I think this is an important thing to just think about as you're looking to buy. Does that watch, does that brand represent what you're all about? All right, guys, those are 5 things I consider when looking to buy a watch. 5 of the most important things in my mind. Like, these are like the kind of commandments, the philosophical commandments that I think about when I'm looking to buy. Now, this goes beyond this if you're looking at key features as well, but I like to think this in a very cerebral way. I think so many people think about like, oh, what's the water resistance? What's this? But you have to think about how all of these watches can fit the mold of who you are, because we're all very specific people, we're all very specific in our tastes, and I think the watches that we decide to buy should also follow that same level of flexibility in who we are. But guys, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, hit the bell icon, really would appreciate that. Also, definitely check out TeddyBaldassarre.com, full authorized dealer of 30 brands, quick and fast fulfillment, dedicated customer support, and a full factory warranty for all the products that we offer. But guys, thank you again so much for watching. Be well, and I will see you all very soon.